Ashland-Belle, Louisiana. I'm Chef John Folse, welcoming you to this great state of ours. These beautiful plantation homes reflect the fascinating history of our culture and cuisine, and I'd like to share this story with you. Why not join me and some of my friends as we visit the plantation homes of our state and cook up another great Taste of Louisiana.
Funding for this program was provided in part by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of Louisiana Gold and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products.
Duncan Farrar Kenner, builder of this beautiful plantation home, served as ambassador to England and France for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Though constantly pursued by federal troops, he was able to evade capture and make his way to England seeking funds for the South. Unfortunately for the rebels, while he was there, Lee surrendered. Duncan and his wife Nan named their home Ashland in honor of Henry Clay's Kentucky estate. With over 2,000 acres, this plantation became one of the largest sugar producers in America. Upon Duncan's death in 1887, John Roos purchased the plantation for $75,000 and renamed it in honor of his granddaughter Helena. I'm Chef John Folse. Welcome to one of the most unique structures on the Mississippi River, Ashland-Belle Helene Plantation. Although one of the finest of all plantation homes on the river, Ashland had fallen into decay and neglect. In halls where heads of state and presidents once roamed, fallen plaster and unpainted walls greet the visitor of today. Having been unoccupied for decades at a time, many of its beautiful interior doors, woodwork, and chandeliers were removed to grace some vandal's home. Even the magnificent hand-polished heart pine floors were ripped away with the seals, exposing the earthwork and foundations below. Algae grows where a mahogany dining room table, black Corinthian marble mantels, and a gentleman's smoking parlor once stood. With evidence of its original grandeur left intact, Shell Chemical, present owner of the property, has now committed to stabilize and protect the Greek temple. On a positive note, the home as it stands today is a perfect classroom for architectural students wishing to study early building techniques. As with Ashland, many other Louisiana plantations destined for ruin are in the process of being saved. On Highway 18 south of Vacherie, facing the Mississippi River, stands beautiful Laura Plantation. This raised Creole cottage is one of the oldest of its type in Louisiana, built in 1804. This home holds stories of war, earthquakes, and the leadership of women. It has been run by women for its entire lifespan, including one for whom it was named. Preservationist Norman Marmillion is overseeing a project to restore this once forgotten plantation home to its original grandeur. He estimates that when completed, over 100,000 visitors per year will once again walk under these galleries. It's hard to imagine that these crumbling walls were home to one of the South's legendary children's fables. Senegalese slaves living here brought stories from their homeland that are believed to be the origin of the famous Bar Rabbit tales. The briar patch here at Laura Plantation may yet be revitalized through the restoration and commercial use of these historic buildings. But not all plantation homes have survived the years. Afton Villa was destroyed by fire in 1963. Remaining are its elegant gardens, including this half-mile alley of oaks leading to the site where the home once stood. These 4 Greek statues stand and watch over the entrance of a ruins garden. This basement wall with its wrought iron figurines form the perfect trellis for these clinging vines. Louisiana flowers grow through what was once the foundation of this magnificent home. To the left of the ruins, one can walk down steps to the portiere garden. Here an intricate maze of boxwood hedges still stand. These original gardens were put in place by skilled landscape architects back in 1849. Although Afton Villa's beautiful Gothic architecture will never be seen again, its gardens remain as a testimony to the grandeur of the Old South. It really is a sad fact that all over the country, not only here in Louisiana, many of these great buildings that we've respected for so many years are crumbling into the ground. And I think right across the street from where you're living, somewhere in this country, is a building that needs to be saved. And you know, it takes a little bit commitment. Sometimes it takes a spark plug in the community who's willing to put up a couple of their own dollars to save these magnificent structures for other generations to come and not only worship as we do, but enjoy in years to come. And I've got a great guest coming into the kitchen today who's going to talk a lot about preservation. Dr. Eugene Cizek is not only on staff at Tulane University, but he's an architect, and an architect that has been involved in many restoration projects, but education and how do we come about to save these wonderful plantations. He's been involved in a couple of those that's standing in Louisiana today that would not be here had he not become involved. So Eugene Cizek will be here to talk about that. Well, we're visiting Belle Helene Plantation in Geismar. That's in Ascension Parish on the Mississippi River, right outside of Donaldsonville. And some of the foods that Duncan Kenner, he was a great statesman. He was obviously one of the wealthiest plantation owners in the South, you can see from his home, and he also loved to cook. There's a couple dishes that he was famous for in that river parish, and one of those is sitting right here on the cutting board. I've got a little sampling of some little braising steaks. These are, it could be skirt steaks, it could be round steaks, pork chops. He loves to braise things. These are skirt steak, and this is off of the flank. The inside of the flank is normally used to make skirt steaks, the flank itself for London broil, and the outside for fajitas if you like southwestern cooking. But these are going to be slowly braised with carrots and mushrooms and all of the great things out of that plantation garden right there at Belle Helene. Now, when we talk about braising, we talk about a very slow cooking method by taking a less expensive cut of meat or something that would be a little tougher, say, and then slowly cooking it in a nice stew or a stock until it becomes very, very tender. And in my little black iron skillet here, I'm going to put some vegetable oil. Of course, I could put olive oil or any of those other oils that you like to use, and I'm going to take the little steaks, the little gravy steaks as I like to call them, and I'm going to season them with salt, pepper, any of those nice herbs and spices that you have laying around the counter. Let me put some cracked black pepper on them like this. And what we're going to do is once they're nice and seasoned, again, I like to just kind of pat all of those flavors together, I'm going to dip them down in a little bit seasoned flour. Now, you don't want to put too much flour on it. You just want to coat the outside of these little skirt steaks with enough flour so that as it goes into the saute pan, and I want to make sure my fire is nice and hot here, once it goes into the saute pan, it's going to sear on the outside and really go ahead and seal in those juices so that this little steak can get nice and tender over the long cooking period, which will take, an hour or so. Now I'll just drop this right down into that saute pan. You can see that it starts to sizzle. You want to get your oil up to about 375 degrees to make sure that the little steaks are going to sear real quickly on the outside and seal in, as I say, all of those nice juices. It seemed that on the plantations, a lot of the less expensive cuts of meat obviously were available. You'd butcher your own calves, you'd butcher your own pigs, and some of these little gravy steaks or the little skirt steaks like this were always found on the tables, like 7 steaks in Louisiana. I remember the little meat truck going around with boxes of these. They were very, very cheap to buy, so people wanted to find new and interesting ways to cook them, and this is probably one of the reasons they became so popular on the plantations. Once they're seared on one side, I'll just kind of take it and turn it over like this. You want to get all of that nice brown color showing, and once that's done like this and you've got it sealed, we can always come back in and put those great Louisiana flavors. I'm going to put some onions, celery, all of these nice flavors that we think of in South Louisiana. I'm sure Duncan Kenner had a garden full of these. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more of that, and of course my garlic. I have to have that garlic. And once this goes in, then I can add some Bermuda onions. You know, I like to use Bermuda onions because of the sweetness in them. And of course, they're used all the time in Louisiana cooking. And fresh sliced mushrooms. A lot of mushrooms on top of these little gravy steaks. And then I can continue to flavor with whatever else I would have in the garden. I'm going to put some diced tomatoes. This could be a good Creole influence of the city of New Orleans. And, of course, some carrots, some sliced carrots, which, as you can see, makes this dish not only a good entree, but you get all of your vegetables as well as your meat in the same dish. Look how pretty that is. Now, for additional flavor, I'm going to put some oregano down in here and a little touch of thyme. I'm going to just break some thyme right on top of the oregano and a couple sprigs of rosemary, all nice herbs growing in every plantation garden in Louisiana. Now, once that's sauteed just like this, we could, of course, turn them to let some of the vegetables get right below and on that black iron. You can do this. But then I would come back and add my braising liquid. Now, what's that going to be? Well, we're going to put a little beef stock. And you can use chicken stock, use beef consomme right out of the can that you find in the store, and a touch of tomato sauce. I really like to put tomato sauce to give this a rust color. You don't want it to be too red and tomatoey. You just want it to have a nice little rust color to it. I'm going to put another touch of salt, a little cracked pepper, and some Louisiana pepper sauce down into it to give the spice that Duncan Kenner liked. And I would take this now and allow it to braise here for about an hour to an hour and a half until those little steaks get nice and tender. And of course, I have some already done for you. I want to show you what they look like. I'll move this off of the fire because this is a hot skillet. So we'll move it off, and I want to show you exactly what the braised little skirt steaks will look like. Take a look at that beautiful blue platter right here. Isn't this a gorgeous dish? Not only the platter, but look at the meat, the little skirt steaks in the center. Just the way Duncan Kenner would have done it at Belle Helene Plantation in the 1850s. Look how nice this is. Okay, the next dish. Well, you see that I like to use crab. I'm using crab all the time because we have so much of it in Louisiana. Not only crab, but shrimp and oysters, all those other seafoods that come out of the Gulf of Mexico and those other watery, swampy areas of Louisiana. And so did the plantation owners. They had a lot of access to all of these things, so they used them quite often. One of the dishes that we found that Duncan Kenner liked was a crab casserole mixed with rice, and you kind of baked it in the oven, or you could actually cook it on top of the stove. But this is a great accompaniment to any meat dish that you would ever want to cook. And to begin with, I've got another little hot black pot here. This could also become my baking dish, by the way. I'm going to put a little bit of buttery flavored oil into that skillet because I want to get it nice and hot. This is a buttery flavored oil, low in cholesterol. You can find it in squeeze bottles in the store. And again, I'm going to go ahead and put in some of those Louisiana flavors. I'm going to put in the same things that we like to put in most of our Louisiana dishes. But remember, as a casserole, we're going to want to put some extra color in here because this is going to be a really nice center of the plate dish. Little carrot, bell peppers, of course, garlic again. Got to have garlic in there. Now, once all of those flavors come together, get me a little spoon. You're going to want to saute all of this nicely into the bottom of this black iron pot. It's about 2 or 3 inch lip on it, so you can put a lot of liquids in here. Now I'm going to add my crab meat. I want you to take a look at these beautiful lumps of crab. Just take a look at how nice these jumbo lump crab. You can put, of course, shrimp or claw crab meat. Any one of the seafoods, chicken, of course, will work nice. All of these things can go right into this skillet to put flavor into the rice casserole. Now, once this is done, I'm going to add a little bit hot milk to the dish. I'm going to put about a cup of hot milk down into my little skillet. Look how hot that is, because this is where the sauce for my rice is going to come from. I'm going to stir this around and add cheese to it, and I'm going to melt the cheese right down into that hot, very hot milk. Just kind of put a cup or so of that cheese down and stir it around. You can see that it will melt quickly. You can even use some of the pre-melted cheeses that you can just fold into here, but it'll give it a really nice cheesy taste. And of course, there were a lot of Germans living on the river right down from Duncan Kenner, so of course cheese would have been a major part of his casseroles. Now I'll add the rice, cooked white rice, right down into, oh gee, look at the mess I made there. Right down into the skillet, and I can stir this just like that. And look how it picks up all of those great flavors. Now I'll take it off of the stove, put it right here, and add my eggs to it. I've whipped about 2 eggs to give it that really nice touch to hold it all together when I bake it in the oven. I'm going to just put this in the oven. I can add more colors to it. I can season it, of course, with whatever spice you would like, a little touch of salt. Remember, the cheese has a lot of salt. And I would just kind of stir this around, cover it, and put it in a 300-degree oven for about an hour. And I have to show you what it's going to look like because I have one already done right here. This is a really nice accompaniment to a lot of different dishes that we can cook. I want you to take a look at this for just a minute while I close this oven door. Oh, I tell you, what a nice-looking dish, huh? Really, really nice-looking dish. And I can continue to garnish it just a little bit more with some of those nice purple cabbage. So that's it, the casserole. It's a little hot. Move this right over here and out of the way. Okay, a couple other dishes that would have been served at Belle Helene Plantation by Duncan. He loved turnips and grew them in his garden all year long here in South Louisiana. And he did a turnip and potato soup, which I have to show you. Look at this. And of course, again, the potatoes thickened and so did the turnips, but then he broke the green leaves of the turnips right into the soup to have a really, really nice flavor. Very unique to Duncan's plantation. And look at this. The greens of the turnip mixed with the German tassel ham to come up with a dip using the leaves of turnip. You can also do this with spinach, a very, very great dish that you can use with croutons. Okay, that's the dishes I wanted to share with you. Now, I told you I had a good buddy coming to visit with me, Dr. Eugene Cizek, a really nice architect and a great guy. How you doing?
Good to see you.
How you been?
Fine.
How's all the projects coming along?
Oh, just fine.
Everything's working out all right?
Real good.
Saving any plantations?
Doing our best we can, yeah.
I tell you what, you saw I made a big mess on my stove here. You and I are going to cook a dish that we talked about and actually ate when we were at the restaurant just a while back, and that is a wilted spinach salad, another dish that came about over at the plantation, at Duncan's plantation. And what I have here is in this black iron skillet, I'm going to put a little bit olive oil because when you wilt spinach with any of the great flavors, you're actually taking the flavor that's in that skillet and putting it into the leaves of the fresh spinach. And a lot of people do it in restaurants today, and you pay a lot of money for a good wilted spinach salad. But I want you to take a look at all of these great ingredients that I have here. Of course, I have some pears and all these different things. I have bacon here. I'm going to crumble a little bacon down into it. I've got some herbs. This is a little basil and thyme I'll put here. Sugar and orange peel. Again, just trying to make a really nice sweet dressing. And I'm going to saute the pears into this skillet as well. And all of these nice colored peppers. I've got some red peppers, some yellow ones, and some black ones. And I'm going to let all of this saute here for just a second. And while this is sauteing, I wanted to ask you a question. You've been involved in many, many different projects to restore plantations, but when did you first get involved? When did your interest peak in plantations?
Well, my parents were from Europe, and so they understood the importance of historic environments. So as a very small child, we would go visit old houses in the city or farms out in the country or plantation houses. And particularly when we heard one was about to be torn down, we would go sort of have a last respite to it, sort of a homage to what we were losing. And of course, this upset my parents very much, and I think it continued over into my own feelings.
Was that something that y'all did often?
We took field trips out into the country or visiting old houses almost every weekend.
Is that right? Yeah. So there was a lot of homes being destroyed back then in one way or another.
Right. It was upsetting, really. But
okay, well, look, what I'm doing here now, I have my little pears and bacon. You can smell all of that great flavor coming together. I'm going to put some red wine vinegar right down into it like this, just to kind of get that really nice tart taste that vinegar is going to give us. And how about a couple pieces of that fresh spinach right back there?
Smells great.
Doesn't that smell good? That sugar is really what does it. I'm going to put a couple nice handsful of just right down into the steam. And what's going to happen is as I toss this around, the dressing from the pears and all of that nice bacon and green bell peppers, of course, I could put a little garlic in it or something like that, and that would be about it. We'd serve it hot naturally because you want to take it right out of the skillet and into the plate and on the table. Let's sit down over here and chat a little bit more about some more of these great plantations. And when did people, I don't know whether it was only in Louisiana, but when did people in general find that there was really no importance to be placed on any of these homes and watch them just deteriorate without doing anything about it?
I think a lot of it really comes from the role that the United States started playing in the early part of this century with high technology and the idea of the commercial activity. And of course, the further we have gone along in society, the more we've become sort of instant gratification. So we've looked more at the short-term effect of making money and not really looking at the long-term effect. And many times we've lost major things which actually could have become very important economic resources.
Well, you know, a lot of the big corporations, and not only industry here in Louisiana, but all over the country, purchased a lot of these properties and probably could have saved many of them, but for some reason they didn't. Why do you think that that was?
Well, I think they weren't from here usually. They were also part of that expanding the petrochemical kinds of development that was going on. The World War II had come along. We needed these things, and it was this whole idea of America coming into its own. And I think, again, we were looking more at the need to develop economic resources very quickly without thinking so much about what the consequences were going to be.
Is it really important anyway to save these buildings? We looked at Belle Helene, how beautiful it is, but what's the importance?
Well, I think the most important reason to save an old building is to establish a context for young people growing up so that they have some idea of where they're coming from, so they can look around at things and get some idea of maybe where a grandfather or a grandmother or just a person of another generation had been. And then the second factor is economic development. As America becomes more and more of a service-oriented place and not so much as a high production, people coming here to visit, people within the United States, people coming from other parts of the world, they want to see the real thing. They'll go to Disneyland once or twice, but they don't want to see the French Quarter in Disneyland. They want to come to the French Quarter and experience the real thing. They want to go to Belle Helene. They don't want to go to some three-quarter scale imitation. And these become very great ways to develop an economic base.
Now, I know that you piloting a program to go into the school systems to actually go and tell the children about this importance. Is that working?
Real well. It's in the 17th year of the Education Through Historic Preservation program, and we've literally introduced thousands, tens of thousands of children, not just in the United States and Louisiana, but all over the world, particularly a few places in Europe and Latin America, to the concept that historic environments are great places in which to learn.
Are we going to lose any more of these buildings? We've seen a lot of them into the ground, but then we've seen, well, we looked at Laura Plantation just a couple minutes ago, and is there a chance that we're going to lose any more, or are they going to be saved now?
Well, I think we'll probably lose a few more, but I think Laura is a very good example where it's a project I've been involved in for many years, first as an academic project at Tulane, and then seeing the economic benefits of how you can take a site like that and expand the economic base of Louisiana by, again, marketing the very things that people come here. You know, after the French Quarter, the second most important site for the tourist is River Road and the plantations.
Well, I know how many thousands upon thousands of people we see every year on the River Road because of the plantations, and I want to thank you for all of the work that you've done to help preserve them, and thank all of y'all for coming and visit with us as we continue to cook up more of these great Taste of Louisiana. Thank you so much for all of that great work. Okay, let's take a look at this.
Funding for this program was provided in part by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of Bruce's Yams and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products.